It's there on LaSalle Street. It's on right off of Hillsborough Road there in Durham.
I've eaten a lot of barbecue there.
I know.
And let me recommend it to anybody who comes to Durham, go to Bullock's Barbecue.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If folks are coming to Myrtle Beach, we'd say east of Chicago or Villa Romana, the Italian restaurant of the year, of course, if they're heading up to Durham. And a lot of folks travel in from all over the Triangle to go to Bullock's Barbecue, and probably all over the state to go to Bullock's Barbecue. They ship barbecue out. I know Phil Sotel recently spoke of getting some barbecue shipped out to Pasadena, California from Bullock's Barbecue. Their barbecue is world-renowned.
I remember when Ken Starr, it was a special prosecutor, remember when Bill Clinton was having his problems. Ken Starr called me. He'd gone to Duke Law School.
Right.
And he asked me if I could join him, my wife and I could join him on a Saturday for lunch at Bullock's. He was coming down for a basketball game.
I remember the Clemson Duke game.
That's right.
That's right. So, we had Perry Tuttle up there with us for that, if you remember. Perry Tuttle and his son came up for that, which was wonderful. You know, it's amazing when you think about all that time. And Durham is where you'd grown up, Ed. Is that right?
That's right, all my life. I mean, I've lived away a lot.
Right.
That's been my home.
You know, when you think about living away, the 6 years in Cambridge, and then there were about 5 years, what about 51 to 55? Let's say you finished law school, you came back to Durham in 1950.
Yeah, put a year in there when I wasn't home.
50 to 51.
Yeah, I'd been away most of the preceding 7 years.
Right.
Then I taught at Duke Law School. I think I was probably as young as anybody that's been a professor there.
Oh, yeah. I think I've seen something that Duke Law School put out in 2004 in a piece about your mother and her bequest there to the law school. They recognized you in that piece in 2004 as the youngest law school faculty ever hired, even to the present. Age 22. Well, you know, if you think about it today, these days, it would be rare that someone would not only go through but finish law school by age 22, and of course even more rare that immediately after law school they'd be allowed to begin teaching other students. So it was pretty rare occurrence probably back in 1950 when you joined the faculty.
I have to say that was predestined because no one would ever have predicted that would happen. And recently, I got an award at the time of graduation at Duke, 50 years there of teaching.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I've got a lot of loyalty to the Blue Devils.
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
also to the Tar Heels where I went to school for.
Sure, sure. I was about to ask, you said 43 from Durham High School, 44 from Exeter, 45 from Durham High School.
No, class of 45.
I know you would have been, excuse me. Of course, you can claim all those. Can you claim anything from Chapel Hill since you began school there?
I get fundraising requests because I'm still in the class of 48.
Exactly, that's right, that's right.
And I go to their reunions. And also at Harvard.
Class of 48, even though you finished in 47.
That's right. Class of 50 at Harvard Law School. Then later I got an LLM at Duke Law School, and that was
59.
59.
Yeah.
So a lot of reunions.
A lot of reunions there, Dad, all the way from 43 up to 59. That's amazing. That's amazing.
It's been exciting.
I'm sure it has. Well, you know, we think about what was it in an early age that spurred your interest in the law?
Well, as I said, I hadn't necessarily planned to be a lawyer.
Right, sure.
But I had two wonderful parents who were both pioneers in law. My mother was one of the first women lawyers in North Carolina. And she had a marvelous career that began in 1920.
Right.
When she was admitted to the bar. She, by the way, was the daughter of a lawyer in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Right.
She was admitted in 1920. She retired at the end of 1990. That's, I think it's 70 years.
That's right.
And at the time she retired, she was I believe, the oldest practicing attorney in America. So I have my mother's example. My dad was one of the first 5 students to read law.
I saw that at Mordecai.
At Trinity College, which was the predecessor of Duke University. So I can claim that he was, or he could have claimed that he was one of the first 5 law students at Duke Law School.
Right, right.
So in any event, and He started about 1905 and died in his law office around 1992.
1971. 71. Excuse
right.
me. No, that's fine.
Right.
You were thinking of your mother in 92. Excuse me. Yeah. Sorry.
But he had that's 67 years.
Yeah.
Something like that. And so having these wonderful parents who were enthralled by the law,
oh yeah,
I think obviously had a subconscious effect on me, and made me want to try to be a public servant like they had been. Mm-hmm. My dad was a fine trial lawyer. He also was a legislator in the North Carolina General Assembly, the legislature, for 5 different terms. But one of the things he did was take cases that were unpopular, difficult, representing underdogs. Mm-hmm. And he felt that everybody needed...
Your father regularly represented underdogs.
He represented a lot of them.
What are some examples of that? We've got about 5 minutes. What are some examples of cases that your father took on that may have been the ones that other people wouldn't take on?
Well, he as a white lawyer would represent African Americans in some difficult situations where they could not get counsel. He also had a very interesting case back in the 1920s involving a Jewish shopkeeper in Durham who had come in to pay his water bill. And he brought in several hundred pennies. He decided to pay it all in pennies. And the guy who was there at the counter for the city was very unhappy. And he made some very anti-Semitic remarks. And of course, there was some anti-Semitism in our society at that time, and unfortunately some of it still remains, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But in any event, my father was retained by this particular shopkeeper to sue the city of Durham because their employee had made the anti-Semitic remark. And the case, as I recall, was thrown out initially and then went to the North Carolina Supreme Court. And there, Chief Justice Walter Clark wrote an opinion that was really historic at the time, very much cited, pointing out that people shouldn't be anti-Semitic. They're talking about one of the oldest cultures in the world, great tradition, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, sort of just extraordinary praise of the Jewish culture and the Jewish tradition. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an example of a situation where my dad stepped in when no other lawyer would have had.
There's another one that I've read about, maybe where he had some shots fired at his vehicle.
Yeah, that's right. He, as I understand it, and I've heard this both from mother and dad, when I was very young, mother was at home with me. I was a little baby. And my dad went up to, I believe it was Henderson, North Carolina, from Durham to represent an African-American young man who had been accused of raping a white woman there. And that was a capital offense at that time.
That was a capital offense?
Yeah,
rape was?
Rape was, and where it was a black-white situation, it was not that unusual to have death penalty imposed. At least it was more than theoretical, I'll put it that way. So he went up to defend him along with the 1 or 2 African-American attorneys from Durham. And they get up there and start the trial. And my mother got a phone call from an Associated Press reporter saying, "Has Mr. Everett gotten home?" And she said, "No, he hadn't gotten here yet. Why are you calling? What's going on?" And the reporter said, "Well, the last report was people were shooting at him." And what happened was he left the courthouse with the 2 African-American attorneys. There was a mob outside, a crowd. He gets into his car, tells them to jump in the back, get on the floor, and he takes off. And there was noise, either backfire or people shooting. And at least there was some indication there was people shooting. He came down to Durham, And then the question was whether they should go back the next day. And he told these attorneys, he said, we got to go back. We can't let people prevent you from doing your duty as attorneys. And even though there are racial overtones and it's dangerous for all of us, we're going to go back. And they did. I think they lost the case, not too surprisingly, but I don't believe there was a death penalty imposed. But I think the willingness to go back into that situation is indicative of his courage and his determination. One of the things sort of interesting about my father.
Those are great words, Dad. We're going to have to break right now, but let's open up tomorrow morning if you're willing to come back with us tomorrow and open up real quick with your dad, and then we'll get back into you. Those are powerful words. Will you come back with us tomorrow?
Absolutely.
That's great. Okay.
I'll be there.
Stay tuned to more Carolina People with the Honorable Robinson Everett coming up next. You know, we thought the last 30 minutes was going to be all about Robinson Everett. It ended up being about his mother and his father and about him. You'll hear more about his father tomorrow. Come back with us, and a lot more about Robinson Everett and his amazing mother, Catherine Robinson Everett. You'll hear some exciting instances of Reuben Oscar Everett taking on the Klan and getting their masks off their head. Come back tomorrow, 7 a.m., Carolina People with Robinson Oscar Everett.